Listen now, and let us travel back to a time when the dragons were gone from Westeros. The great dance of the dragons had become a memory. The fields that had once burned beneath dragon fire had grown green again. Castles had been rebuilt. Lords had married, had children, and had begun telling their sons and daughters stories about wars that seemed impossibly distant. But the scars remained. And upon the Iron Throne sat King Daeron II Targaryen, a king remembered by many as Daeron the Good. His reign was not an age of dragons. It was an age of knights, of tournaments, of banners snapping in the wind, of swords ringing against shields. And somewhere, on one of the dusty roads of the Seven Kingdoms, rode a young knight who possessed almost nothing. His name was Duncan, though most people would eventually know him by another name. Dunk. He was tall, very tall. So tall, in fact, that ordinary men looked small beside him. But despite his size, there was nothing particularly impressive about the rest of him. He had no rich clothing, no famous family name, no castle, no lands, no servants, no lord waiting to welcome him home. He was what Westeros called a hedge knight, a knight without a master, a knight who slept wherever he could find shelter and ate whatever he could afford, a knight who wandered from castle to castle, hoping some lord might offer him employment. And now Duncan was alone. His old master was dead. Ser Arlen of Pennytree had been Duncan's teacher, protector, and the closest thing he had ever had to family. For years, Duncan had followed the old knight across the Seven Kingdoms. He had carried his master's shield. He had tended his horse. He had watched him fight. He had listened to his stories. And from those years, Duncan had learned something important. Being a knight was supposed to mean more than wearing armor. It was supposed to mean honor. It was supposed to mean defending those who could not defend themselves. It was supposed to mean standing your ground when fear told you to run. And now Ser Arlen was gone. Duncan had buried him beneath the earth. There would be no more lessons, no more stories. No more master telling him where they would ride tomorrow. Duncan was on his own, but he had one thing left: his sword and his armor, and that was enough. Because Duncan had heard about a tournament being held at Ashford Meadow, a great tournament, knights from across the realm would be gathering there. And for a young hedge knight, a tournament could change everything. Win enough glory, and perhaps a lord might notice him. Win enough gold, and perhaps he could finally afford better armor. Perhaps he could become more than a wandering knight sleeping beneath trees. Perhaps he could make a name for himself. So Duncan mounted his horse and began riding toward Ashford. He did not know that his life was about to change forever, because someone was following him. A boy, a strange boy, a boy with a shaved head and a great deal of confidence. Duncan eventually discovered him and demanded to know why he was there. The boy didn't seem frightened. Instead, he introduced himself simply as Egg. Duncan asked where his family was. Egg's answers were evasive. There was something odd about him. He didn't behave like an ordinary peasant boy. He spoke too confidently. He knew too much. And he seemed remarkably interested in Duncan's journey. Most importantly, Egg wanted to become Duncan's squire. Duncan was hardly in a position to hire anyone. He barely had enough money for himself. Yet the boy wouldn't leave, and eventually Duncan allowed him to come along. So there they were, a giant hedge knight and a bald-headed boy. riding together toward Ashford. To anyone watching them pass along the road, they would have looked insignificant. Just another poor knight and his young servant. Nothing special. Nothing important. But Westeros has a funny way of hiding its greatest secrets in plain sight. Because Egg was not simply Egg. He was Aegon Targaryen, a prince of the blood, the youngest son of King Daeron II. And somehow, this young prince had decided that riding around the countryside with a hedge knight was preferable to living the protected life of royalty. Duncan didn't know any of this. Not yet. And Egg seemed perfectly happy to keep it that way. The two continued down the road. Ahead waited Ashford Meadow. Ahead waited the tournament. Ahead waited knights, wearing the colors of great houses. Lords, princes, champions, and enemy Duncan had never imagined meeting. But more importantly, ahead waited the first great test of Sir Duncan the Tall, a test that would reveal what sort of knight he truly was. Because sometimes a man's worth isn't discovered when he wins. Sometimes it is discovered when he is given something worth losing everything for. And Duncan was about to learn that lesson. The road to Ashford had begun.